Oh, hello everyone. It's Susie Crew from Esoteric Trading Solutions. I hope you're all well. I hope you're doing exactly what you want to do in life, and I hope everything's good. And please be kind to yourself and be kind to each other. I just want to talk about Bitcoin and its coins, and obviously there's a new coin on the block as well, but just wanted to really sort of look back at Bitcoin and all the other coins and now come up to Bitcoin Diamond. So just really wanted to do that. I suppose I could do a series, but I just want to do it as fast as I can. You have got the information there, and if there's any questions, please do give me a call, send me a message, or send me an email, or a note, whatever. I guess going back, Bitcoin was founded in 2008, 2009 by a fellow called an alias called Satoshi Nakamoto, and he wanted this Bitcoin to be medium exchange, peer-to-peer, where the middle person was cut out of the scheme, where you didn't have to deal with big banks or institutions or anyone else, but you just dealt with person to person. Settlements was to be done within 10 minutes. The idea that everyone was going to participate in Bitcoin and that people were going to be miners on little, computers, their normal machines, and everyone was going to participate in this thing called Bitcoin. I guess what happened is that didn't happen. Miners or people that mine Bitcoin got to realize that they could mine Bitcoin with faster computers with graphic cards and bigger CPUs, and eventually they started mining Bitcoin with application-specific integrated circuits, which just essentially means that the computer has a lot more processing speed and can basically work out the algorithm or the mathematical formula for the coin. Every developer that produced a coin will have a mathematical formula for the coin, and it's up to the miner to basically work out that mathematical formula before they can actually mine a transaction. Look at the transaction, mine it, pass it, take the fee, and then add it on to the block, and then add it on to the blockchain, essentially. So back in the days of 2009 and 2010, when Bitcoin was not very well known, these were very, very cheap, and obviously the mining transactions weren't expensive, and also to get Bitcoin through as a transaction, it did it within 10 minutes. But what we're finding now is Bitcoin is getting much more expensive and transactions are taking longer. And there's a main reason for that, because the miners that control Bitcoin, there are four major miners, and they come out of China. And the reason why they come out of China is because electricity, water and power is very cheap. And the four largest miners basically mine 70% or 75% of Bitcoin's hash rate, give literally Bitcoin the mining capability or their hash rate capability. In other words, their computer grunt, if you want to call it that, to mine Bitcoin coins. And basically 70 to 75% of the miners had that pool. So it's Ant Pool, BW, BTC, China, and F2 Pool, as you can see there. So effectively, those guys have a lot of power to mine Bitcoin, a massive amount of power. And even though the technology of Bitcoin is not decentralized, there is some justification to saying that Bitcoin itself has become centralized because of the powers of the miners. So just recently we've seen new facilities being opened up in South Africa and Canada, where electricity is cheap, and a fellow Jacques Certain said that he's launched a mining farm in South Africa, and there's a few other places in Canada that have just been launched in terms of mining shops, and we do see some in Russia as well. Also, the history behind Bitcoin, we've seen Bitcoin in other countries like Zimbabwe, Kenya, and Venezuela is trading a lot higher. And particularly in Zimbabwe, if you look at the Wirex exchange, you'll see that Bitcoin is trading to buy at 16,490 when you compare it to the American or Hong Kong exchange, where Bitcoin's at 9,500. And to sell, you'd be selling at around 15,722, so it's quite a wide spread. Now, there is reason why it trades so high on those exchanges, the Zimbabwe exchange, because they've basically had currency collapse. They've had massive bad government policy. When Mugabe came in, he basically got rid of all the white farmers in businesses and on the farms and the like. and basically the economy collapsed, the export market collapsed. They're actually getting no foreign receipts into the country. They still had debt that they had to pay off, and subsequently what he did was started to print money. When you start printing money, it's effectively like selling currency into the market. You keep selling the currency, and because debts had to be paid off in foreign currency, as the Zimbabwe dollar kept going down, it meant that you had to pay off more debt in terms of foreign currency, because the Zimbabwe dollar was actually less against the foreign currency or US dollar or whatever it may be. Now we saw that situation in Nazi Germany, pre-Hitler, where the currency devalued to such a degree that any of their foreign debt, just skyrocketed because the currency devalued to such a degree. Also, they weren't exporting anything, so they weren't receiving currency receipts, and anything they were importing, foreign countries would actually invoice them in their own currency. So what happens is the domestic currency, being the Deutschmark or the Zimbabwe dollar, declined to such a degree that everything else, globally was costing them a fortune. And so therefore what you have in the country where it's a bad currency, you basically have hyperinflation. So in other words, the currency moves down so quickly that everything continues to cost you money because you're paying in foreign dollars. And that's what you see in Zimbabwe. So Bitcoin has become a store of value, and obviously demand is there because it's not going down as quickly as the Zimbabwe dollar, for example. With Bitcoin, we've also seen that it's getting a lot more traction in the media. It's been added to the Argentina's largest futures exchange. They're planning to add it. This is the largest South American exchange in South America. Also, there's a plan to put it on the CME Futures Exchange, which is the world's largest futures exchange in the US. You see it being added to Van Eyck funds. You see it being added to investment management funds, and you see it also, Bitcoin did one of the first ever cross-chain atomic swaps with Litecoin, which was a success. But in saying that, Bitcoin still had this problem of the 1 MB limit storage. Also, it's slow, costing money. The more you do transactions, the slower it gets, the more costs it becomes. So what happened is Bitcoin Cash got launched in 2017 in August, and that basically was, a coin that was in preparation to counteract some of the problems with Bitcoin itself being, a small size, 1 MB, being a slow processor, the mining power is a bit of a problem, and the transaction fees and everything else. So they decided to, with Bitcoin Cash, develop and introduce SegWit, which was basically keeping the signature witnesses separate to the transaction itself, so that it would give more room on the blocks. And then it became all this situation between, whether they'd have a SegWit 2 or whether they wouldn't. So basically Bitcoin's hash rate and Bitcoins, they were actually in competition with the same miners. Bitcoin Cash, for example, could process 4 times more transactions than Bitcoin. And it's because they have the SegWit, the segregated witness, or the segregated authorization, or the signatures separate from the rest of the transactions, so they could fit more information on the blocks. But now what we do see is there's a lot of argy-bargy going on between the Chinese miners, who seem to be backing Bitcoin, and against the original Bitcoin itself. And what's interesting about this, you did have one of the Chinese miners saying, this fellow here, Zuo Hapio Young, basically saying that Bitcoin, the old Bitcoin, is going to die, and they're basically now migrating their business to Bitcoin Cash. And we have seen massive amounts of move in terms of volatility of Bitcoin Cash. And basically, Bitcoin itself keeps going up, but there has been a huge amount of volatility in terms of Bitcoin Cash. What's also concerning is Bitcoin Cash basically, has a difficult rate, a difficult adjustment, which comes along on the 28th of November. And essentially, it takes Bitcoin, the old Bitcoin, 10 or 2 weeks to basically maintain stability from this difficulty adjustment, if you want to call it that. Whereas Bitcoin Cash can readjust itself within 1 day. So there is some concern that the miners will move to Bitcoin Cash and move away from Bitcoin, and it could create more volatility and a bit more downside risk in terms of Bitcoin, and Bitcoin Cash will thus rise and take over the old Bitcoin, the original Bitcoin. So it's sort of going to be very interesting on the 28th of November whether this happens. It takes, as I said before, around 2 weeks for Bitcoin to readjust itself in terms of the difficulty adjustment, and it only takes Bitcoin Cash like a day to fix itself in terms of this mechanism. If you look at this article that BTMX brought out, and it does talk about it, a little bit of research by them. There's the article reference there. Blog, BitMEX, whatever it is, implications for Bitcoin and the new Bitcoin Cash difficulty adjustment. And pretty much what they're saying is that Bitcoin Cash basically it's got a rolling 1 day period for adjustment, where Bitcoin it takes a longer time to adjust itself, and it's a two week adjustment window. And they're basically saying there could be potential problems for the usability and integrity of the Bitcoin network. And which also could basically mean that, the cost of using Bitcoin in comparison to Bitcoin Cash is going to be completely different as well. And there could be different price rises and just different times to get transactions processed, which could be a real problem in itself. So this is an ongoing saga, and it continues to go very much. So basically, when we go through, we've had this whole issue with SegWit 2, that was 2 times, which was cancelled. Then we had Bitcoin Gold, which basically used a different mining algorithm or a different computer mathematical formula model for its coins, and they used ASIC chips, very similar to called Equihash, similar to what Zcash and Ethereum use. Again, to make things better. But what we've found is Bitcoin is still being the coin that's being used, rather than any of the other new Bitcoins, if you want to call it that, the other new forks of Bitcoin. Even though there might be the same amount on issue, it may be they have more, megabytes and whatnot, but we have found the old Bitcoin is still being used. So we've still got these issues that the hard fork was trying to fix, and it hasn't actually fixed, which is a bit ironical. And then what we've still got on Bittrex is still, even with the hard fork, SegWit 2 times not working, we've got on Bittrex, still B1 and B2 coins, which are trading in their own way as well. So it just makes everything really, really confusing. And now we've also got coin number 6, which is Bitcoin Diamond. And what's interesting about Bitcoin Diamond, I'll just go through this. But again, no one really knew that this was, going to come. All of a sudden it came. They're now talking that it's, directly, if you look on Bitcoin Diamond's page, that it's being used to solve the problems of Bitcoin, a lack of privacy protection, slow transaction confirmation, high threshold for new members, and replay attack. So Bitcoin Diamond is supposed to address all these with encryption. And essentially, also it's got a 210 million supply, and it's supposed to address all these problems that Bitcoin has: lack of privacy, slow transaction confirmation, high threshold for new members, replay attack, which, Bitcoin doesn't have any replay attack. In other words, someone could do a transaction on one block or one chain and do a transaction on the other, and then runs the risk that you could be dealt on one chain compared to another chain, which is a real problem. Whereas with Bitcoin Diamond, that could not happen. So if you get dealt on one chain, say you're dealing with Bitcoin Diamond, there's no way you can be dealt on another chain with Bitcoin Cash, for example. So this, came out on the 24th, I think it was, 24th American time. And the total amount is 210 million. It's 10-minute block time, 8 megabytes. It's SegWit, replay protection, and encrypted amount. So if you look on CoinCap, you'll find basically that Bitcoin Diamond futures are down already 24%, and they're trading at, I think, at 68.39. I think more recently, I need to look that up. But then there's a couple of articles that came out. The Merkle, the writer said, be wary. This project, there seems to be a number of lies quite high. The website looks weird. It looks like it's from mainland China, and there's, spelling errors on the website. Also said that the developers are not known. It mentions Team Evie and Team 007, but no one knows who these developers are. They're pretty much, some of the writers that I've read are actually suspicious of the coin, which is quite interesting. And it also, when you do read about Bitcoin Diamond, it also says they cannot take responsibility for third-party providers such as the listed exchange and wallets, etc. So I have left some references there because it's all a bit weird and a bit strange. Two of the writers that I've actually read have sort of said that there's something really odd here, and they're basically saying be careful. So it just seems very, very weird, the whole thing, and just especially what's going on with Bitcoin Cash and everything else. And now we've got a Bitcoin Diamond as well, and it's not listed on any exchange at the moment. But if you look under CoinCap Market, you'll see that the futures are actually trading. I hope you got something out of this. Please leave me a message if you're not sure about something, or I can explain something a bit better. Thank you very much for listening, and do appreciate it. And to all of you, please be happy and be safe. Thank you.